Okay, it's the Husk Unfiltered Radio made in Brighton. We've gone back to that tagline. I like it. It rolls off the tongue even though we're not radio, but we are made in Brighton. Anyway, on this week's show, we've got Sabina as a guest, and she is currently running a plant shop, I think I can call it, and has also recently written a book which is going to be released in September, all about having plants in your house and how it will affect your mental health and keep you happy and all this kind of stuff. And it's going to be quite a big deal. It's going to be available in quite a lot of places, and I should wager sell many copies. So she's going to be on the show today. Now, I know I listen to these shows by other people, and it's so tedious, isn't it, when they just start off with all this mumbling along and you're like, get me to the content, and they go, oh, can you hit fucking subscribe? Can you hit like? Can you leave a comment? Can you share? All of this kind of stuff. It's really frustrating. But on the other hand, it seems to be that if you don't prod people, they don't do it. So please do hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. Do press like, or even a thumbs down. Anything, any interaction satisfies our dystopian algorithm overlords. So do that. Share things around. Also, next week's show, later in this week actually, we're going to have life coach Nicola's going to be on. You might remember quite a long time ago now we were talking about life lessons on the Husk with Nicola and some of the previous guests, so we're going to try and revisit some of those things, see where all that's at. We've got quite a few guests lined up, or ideas for guests, but we are still looking for guests. So if you can think of somebody that is an interesting person that might make an interesting show on the Husk, do let me know. We're looking for people from different walks of life, people who've done interesting things, people who have different opinions, maybe the silent voices, the voices that we don't hear. That would be quite interesting. So get in touch with the show if you're interested in that. If you think you can help the show in any other way, get in touch, and that would be nice too. Right, I'll stop with all the mumbo jumbling, and we'll play The Thing by Carl. Right, Sabina, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Baz. Thanks for having me.
Good. You'll have to bear with me. This is a new setup because I used to sit up there and I was always quite far away from the guests. Uh-huh. And then I thought I'll get it like this, and I thought maybe it's too close.
Oh, but no, it's not, I really like it.
It's okay, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm pleased with it. Now, Sabina, you are running a shop in Brighton, a cactus shop, is that right? Cactus, cacti?
Both, yes. It's called Hi Cacti, but it's not actually just cacti. It's a variety of different kind of low maintenance and easy indoor plants.
Okay. Is cacti the plural?
It is, but you can actually say cactuses, even though everybody thinks you can't.
Right,
you
okay.
Can.
Well, that's what I say.
Yeah, so both are acceptable.
Cool. Now, before we go any further, we're going to have to get into the accent. Where are you from?
I'm from Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And how long have you been in the UK?
Long time, 15 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
How old are you now? You don't mind me asking?
No, I don't. I'm 36.
36. Okay. So you left Austin, Texas and came to Brighton. How did that?
Yeah, random life choices. Like a lot of people in Brighton, I came here by accident.
Yeah.
So I never intentionally kind of packed up my bags and moved here. I came here for a summer when I was at university in Austin, and I just fell in love with it, and I never left.
Okay. And how did you find living in Austin? What was that like?
It's an amazing
a very
city.
different place, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Texas in general, it's, quite a different world, really. But Austin, ironically, is actually a lot like Brighton. It's a big university city, so it's actually very Green Party, very liberal. It gets compared a lot to kind of places like San Fran and
is this the
Portland.
place where like Joe Rogan moved to, and
yes.
lots of sort of people have
Totally. Yeah, it's we have a pretty famous festival called South by Southwest. And so so it's got that kind of vibe where it's quite musical, quite arty, quite young, quite hip. So when I came to Brighton, considering I knew nothing about Brighton, I thought it was quite ironic that I accidentally moved to almost a British seaside version of the same.
Yeah, because obviously Brighton for England is quite unique, I think.
Absolutely. There's a lot of crossover, and anytime I've had friends from either Austin come visit me here or vice versa, lots of people can kind of feel that vibe as well.
Now, let me ask you this, though, before we get into why we're here. You've been in Brighton for roughly the same amount of time as me, I suppose. I feel like Brighton has changed over that time. and I feel like it's maybe changed slightly for the worse. I think it's like lost some of its I don't know, it's quirk a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. We've got a lot more sort of new buildings going up which are a bit soulless, and people from London, but some people say to me, Baz, you know, you're just getting older, so you know, you don't party so much, and you know, it's a subjective thing. I do think it's subjective, but what do you think?
Ironically, not to take it back to Austin, but Austin's going through exactly the same thing at the moment, so it's kind of it's quite strange. I mean, Austin, for example, it's one of the fastest growing cities in America. So that change, it doesn't even feel slightly subtle there. It feels completely in your face. And so I totally recognize it in both, because that 15 years I've been here consistently, I've only been occasionally visiting Austin. So when I go back about once a year, it feels so obvious. And of course here, when we live here day in, day out, it feels a little bit more gradual. But especially since the pandemic, I think it's feeling even more obvious here in Brighton, because there's a real shift in seeing people coming down from London for all the good reasons as well, to be honest, because I think that the pandemic's really made people think about their lifestyles a lot and what they'd like to change. And I think a lot of people, you know, kind of dealing with being stuck in the city, literally, it just made them kind of realize what's important to them, and having the beach on our doorstep and kind of the downs and the lifestyle that we have down here, it's quite relaxed. So I get why people are coming. Obviously, it's one of the things that keeps all of us here as well. But I think that quirkiness, you know, it's one of the things that makes places like this feel really special. Like the kind of mantra in Austin is keep Austin weird. And it's funny because I think obviously that really does apply to Brighton as well. And I think that it would be a real shame for these places to kind of like not have the arts being quite as supported.
I sometimes feel for an arty place, you do need a healthy amount of really broke people. And it's becoming very difficult to be broke in this town.
You can't be broke in this city anymore. And it is a shame, because you're right, everybody, and it's interesting because most of the people I know who are makers and artists are starting to have to move out to Worthing and kind of the outskirts of it. But it's, hopefully it doesn't change the dynamic too much, but I think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah. All right, let's get back on topic. So you've got this shop, Hi Cacti. It's up on Seven Dials if you're in the Brighton area. You've also got a website where you can order stuff, and we'll put some links up to that. We'll show some shots of the the website and all of this kind of stuff. But you've also got, interestingly enough, a book coming out. You're now an author.
Crazy.
Sabina, how do you pronounce the surname of yours?
Palermo.
Sabina Palermo. You've got this book. It's Hi Cacti, Growing Houseplants and Happiness. You very kindly bought a copy that I can have a look at. So talk us through it. How did you manage to get this on the go?
Another random life decision. I was really, really fortunate. As I'm not a writer, a publisher's actually approached me.
Okay.
It's nice too, because they're a Brighton-based publishing house, Leaping Hair. So they're quite a nice, small publishing company, which was really good for a first-time author, because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. So they approached me about 2 years ago. So it's been quite a.
And how did they come across you? How did they find you?
Well, it was really funny. I don't know if you were familiar with Viva magazine. It was a really lovely kind of local free magazine. And they interviewed me in Viva a few years ago. Unfortunately, they're not writing anymore. Another loss during the pandemic. But yeah, so they approached me for a little interview. I did that. I was already just chuffed with being in Viva magazine because it was one of my little favorite mags. And Leaping Hair picked that up, and it stood out to them because they were looking for somebody to kind of write a book about mindfulness through plant care.
Okay, so they had the actual kind of idea for the book in mind, and they were looking for an author, basically. Yeah,
it was really weird. I didn't know that was even a thing or a way that would go. I've got quite a few friends who are struggling writers and trying to get published for many, many years. And so I have to admit, when they sent me an email, it was kind of funny. I actually thought it was a con.
Well, that's what I'd think. I'd be like, oh yeah, how much money do you want for that?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of vanity publishing around, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things, if I'm honest, I've kind of struggled with the whole time, because I guess to me, writing a book should should in ways be almost like your life goal and your life passion. And I just know so many people who try to work towards that their whole life. So for somebody to come to me with a kind of almost ready-made concept and idea, if it wasn't one that was so close to my heart anyway and so perfect for me and my business, to be honest, I don't know if I would have done it, because once again, I'm not a writer.
Yeah.
But it was...
Well, it's one thing for this. So this book is, it's about houseplants, or as I falsely described it on the show last week, pot plants. Which it's not about, but it's about houseplants, but it's also about happiness, which we might say mental health. Is that a fair thing to say? So what's the link here? Talk me through it.
Yeah, well, basically, a lot of the time at Hi Cacti, we're doing a lot more than kind of just selling plants. We really chat to customers about kind of their own needs, what they're looking for, even a bit what their lifestyle is like, because we really do try to kind of pair people with plants that they're going to have success with. Because I think lots of people just think, well, plants are either really easy or really hard. People seem to have quite strong opinions on if they can keep plants or not, almost like they're pets. But so we just kind of try to chat to people about what their experiences are with plants, how new they are to keeping indoor plants, and then give them suggestions on what we recommend. But I think a big part of that is also knowing that plants bring a lot more than just like an aesthetic thing to your space. It brings you literally a breath of fresh air. And also mentally, it really can calm you, relax you, help deal with like stress and anxiety. So there's so many things, both mentally and physically, that introducing indoor plants can bring to us.
And have you done a lot of research into that area for this book, or is it just...
I did, yeah. It was one of those things where I think naturally, because I've had the business for 5 years now, so kind of naturally having a business like that, and that being something that always was kind of more at the heart of the business for me. I was always kind of naturally learning about these things as I go, but especially once they approached me about the book, I obviously did a lot more research into it, because I then kind of realized, okay, it's one thing for me to be just kind of chit-chatting with customers in a shop about it and chatting to my friends about it, but I wanted to at least make sure that I was hopefully in this book able to really convey that, the way that we get recommended nowadays to kind of get out into nature for all of the healing aspects that we can get for going for a walk in a forest, we can also get at least some of the same sort of benefits by surrounding ourselves day to day with houseplants. Yeah,
it's strange that most of our housing, and especially like modern designs, it's all sort of like about eliminating nature completely, right? Everything's very straight. There's not really much, exposed wood or anything like this, and it's all very pristine. But plants are the sort of bit of nature that people do have in their house.
Completely, it's the part that softens those spaces and those edges. I mean, exactly as you said. Like, I think a lot of kind of contemporary architecture and design, it's quite minimal, and it's supposed to feel quite calming, with it being so kind of straight and symmetrical and plain. But the things that make it feel like a home are those green soft touches. And even if it's not just plants, because I know that's obviously my business, but the kind of soft furnishings that we bring in and the way that we style those spaces is what makes it go from feeling like a room to a home.
Now let's get down to the nitty gritty here. With a plant, obviously you get sort of old school gardeners will say, if you talk to your plant, it's going to do better. And you get this kind of thing. And when you're tending to a plant over a long period of time, you do sort of have this sort of relationship with it in some kind of way. Do you think there's something about plants and maybe nature as a whole that we don't fully understand? Do you think there's some sort of energy-based stuff about it, or is it more simple than that? Is it just how we understand it already?
You know what? I definitely do think that. I think that we are so connected to nature, and I think that even kind of making these parallels now about how plants calm us and nature calms us. It's kind of funny because at the moment we're almost talking about these things like it's this new thing, and actually it's a very old thing. I think what's really happened is we've just been so disconnected, for so long now that things that, for example, like the indigenous knew and our ancestors knew, and the way that they were constantly handling plants and utilizing plants, we're now starting to hopefully come back to a bit more of a resurgence of that. But it is quite funny the way that we talk about it, almost like these things are new in some way, because they're not. I think they're really instinctual. I think there's a reason why when scientists look at the brain, and when we even see the color green, it calms and relaxes our brain.
Right, okay.
I mean, to me, our existence is formed around having a relationship where we're really closely connected to nature. But obviously, most of our day-to-day lives, we're not necessarily able to kind of get out into nature as much as we'd like. And I think that's where houseplants can hopefully start to play a really, really important, small, accessible way day to day to feeling that kind of energy and feeling that connection. Yeah.
Now, you're called Hi Cacti. Cacti are relatively easy to look after. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. The Hi Cacti thing was obviously kind of a bit of a nod to me being from Texas as well.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of where the whole business started. I started with making concrete pots and putting cactus and succulents in them as kind of a really, really easy way for people to just like add touches of greenery, and kind of for the people who aren't green fingered, because I wasn't at all when I started the business. So all the plants that I had at home were all cactus and succulents, just because I needed plants that could thrive from my lifestyle at the time, which was thriving from kind of neglect.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like, I probably shouldn't talk about this on the show, but my ex was quite terrible at looking after houseplants. I think by her own admission, she would say that. And she had a cactus, whatever you call it. And if I've got it there behind you, you can actually see there. The bottom bit is where she was looking after it, and then you can see when we split up.
It's thriving.
Yeah. So, but I'm thinking now, because I looked on YouTube, and apparently I can just chop that off now and replant it. Then it'll look fresh.
Yeah, you can literally decapitate it.
That's what I'm thinking about doing.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing is, with kind of like a serious cactus like that, which is like a long kind of column cactus, where you actually cut it as well, you'll get kind of new, we'll call them arms, but new growth coming up from even where you cut it as well.
Right.
But yeah, you can literally take the top part and repot that as well. You need to let it dry out in between.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, I've never had the arms, but I've also never had one flower. My mum's had them flower. Is that difficult to do?
You know what? It's cactus, firstly, don't flower that often anyway. They are like a very seasonal thing. But if you're one of the lucky people who have a greenhouse or a conservatory in the UK, then that's usually the sort of places where they can flower. My nan had a conservatory, and I always remember her cactus flowering here in the UK because my grandmother was English. And definitely you can get them to flower, but they need to be in kind of like pristine sun elements.
Yeah. Now, so you've set up a shop. Now you're a bloody author. You're quite youthful. These are brave things to do. I mean, setting up a plant shop in 7 Dials, probably very expensive, I should imagine. You don't know until you start how it's going to go. Where did this sort of boldness come from?
I think I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. Even when I was at school really young, my parents always joke about how I actually got in trouble when I was probably about 9. I would make these little like flower pens, and I'd bring them into school and sell them out of my locker. And people would kids were literally spending their lunch money to buy like little crafty things that I was making. So I think, a little bit of that kind of drive and an interest in making something and selling it was always there. But I mean, I have to admit, definitely as much as I could have hoped for things like having a shop and writing a book, there was always a time and a place where those things felt completely, not necessarily ever out of reach, but they did always feel like maybe really big and bold things. But I think like a lot of people, as soon as you just start to, I don't know, like put yourself out there, that was the biggest thing. And that, of course, does feel like taking a big risk. But as soon as you put yourself out there and you realize, okay, like this is okay if I do fall, this is okay if I don't succeed. And really thinking about what the definition of success looks like to you anyway. A lot of the time, like if you're not willing to put yourself out there and at least try, then that's...
You seem very grounded and confident to me. Have you ever had periods of sort of anxiety and depression or things? Or
Yeah, I think that, like, I don't know, my childhood was quite up and down. There was not a lot of kind of necessarily feeling really confident in myself when I was growing up, and my home life was quite up and down. And then I think that I just had to grow up quite quickly in a way. And, you know, I picked up and moved to this country on my own when I was 22. And even that, some would say that takes a level of kind of comfort and confidence in yourself to do that.
Unless you're running away from things.
Yeah, totally. It was probably a slight combination of both of those, to be fair. But I did always really love my life in Austin, and I had amazing friends. But I think that I've always felt at least like, it sounds so cheesy to say kind of like dream big, but I think I always had quite an imagination when I was younger anyway. And so the idea of picturing how I might want my life to look, and then the idea of just taking a leap of faith and going for it, I did find too, I know I'm quite lucky and privileged as well for various reasons, but I think any opportunity I've ever seen, I've just taken it. And I think, for example, coming to this country, my mum's English and I had dual nationality.
Oh, okay.
So I think I always thought, you know what, if you don't take advantage of that situation and just at least go there and go for it, then I'd probably just feel at some point like maybe I'd missed out. And I think it was the same with the book, for example. It felt completely out of my comfort zone, but I thought, when does this happen? And this feels like a very fortunate, thing to be offered to be able to do. And even though I was quite terrified of putting myself out there in a completely new and different way, I had to remind myself that I felt the same way about the shop at one point and about coming to this country, for example. So that leap.
With this book, it's not out yet. When's it out? Where's it going to be available? How much does it cost?
It is $14.99. It's available for pre-order on my website and also on Amazon and Waterstones. It's going to be out in the UK. It's going to be out in Australia and the US.
Wow.
I just got confirmation as well, which was really exciting, and it's still kind of blown my little mind, that it's going to be for sale in Urban Outfitters and Anthropology here in the UK, which I remember working in Anthropology when I was 19, along with many jobs at the same time. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even afford to buy anything in that shop. Yeah, I couldn't even afford to buy anything, even with my discount when I worked there. And now I'm going to have a book in that shop. So it's, kind of amazing.
It's a very I've got the book in my hand now. I'm just looking for it. It's a very well presented book.
Thank you.
It's got, obviously I haven't read it. It's got lots of nice pictures in it. It's got lots of advice on different plants, all sorts of things going on in there. Seems like a good book that would make a good present for somebody.
Thank you.
Or, the kind of book that you just have showing off. It's a showing off book, isn't it?
That's really kind. Thank you.
Well, I was walking, people in Brighton, they just leave stuff on the street, don't they? And someone left the Wild Swimming book, which was quite a famous book quite a few years ago now. And everyone, there was a bit of a fad for wild swimming. So I picked it up and I thought that'll make a good book to have. So I've got it in my lounge, but I've never looked at it. It just looks quite nice.
Just books that you have strategically placed whenever certain people come over as conversation starters.
I'm definitely cool.
I'd be super, super flattered if somebody was considering my book one of those as a good conversation starter or to impress anyone.
This is quite a big. You're going to be in quite a lot of places. It's going to be available, isn't it? You're going to.
Yeah. No, it's still pretty mind blowing, I have to admit, because like we were talking about, the copy that we have here at the moment is an advanced copy, and I was writing the book throughout kind of the pandemic and when we were in lockdown, really. So for it to go from literally just being a computer screen, which I'm not going to lie, many times I was starting to despise that computer screen, for it now to be like a physical, tangible book with lovely images, it feels now like something I can be really excited about.
Have they give you an expectation of kind of what they're hoping to sell? Or, I mean, don't have to talk about numbers with me, but
okay.
do you just don't know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's one of those too where, you know, like we were talking about.
It's like a debut album.
Yeah, you almost have I think you almost can't have any expectation. I mean, I have to admit, even when we started talking about things like royalties and things like that, I remember when they were showing me the contract, I kept thinking, well, I don't know if this is good. I don't know if this is bad.
Yeah.
Like, there were lots of things about the whole process of writing a book that I found either good, bad, overwhelming, and just generally had no idea about.
Now, you said that you're super ambitious and entrepreneurial. I think that's the word you used.
Did I say that?
You did, yeah.
So cringe.
You've got a shop. You've got a book about to come out. If it all goes swimmingly well and you become super rich and famous, what's like the next thing? What would be a bigger dream?
Oh gosh, I mean, I don't think I'd ever become rich and famous necessarily. I think because I think I'm actually just quite happy with my life as it is. Mm-hmm. I think that there's quite a few next steps that I would love to see for the business. Like, for example, because I've lived quite transatlantic for so long, where my family and my friends are on one end of the globe, and I've built a life here in Brighton with my partner and our little dog, so to speak, and our friends here. I kind of always hate the fact that I'm missing someone. So I think that, you know, if for example, I don't know, fame and money was suddenly a thing that was on the cards, I would love to bridge that gap. I'd love to figure out a way to where I could have Hi Cacti as a part of my life in America as well, whether that be like a shop somewhere over there that means a lot to us.
International,
yeah, I guess so. Just to be able to, I don't know, just have a bit more of a convenient flow between the two places that I love, because I do obviously miss them.
Now, I'm from the sort of north of England, or at least north from here.
Where are you from?
Stoke-on-Trent, which some people say is the Midlands. Cultural north, I'm calling it. But when I moved to Brighton, I did have to make some minor cultural adjustments, I think.
I bet,
people are a little bit different here. One of the things was that people really like to hug down here, or at least before the virus did.
Not anymore.
And this was totally an alien thing to me. And it took me a while to get used to. And then I remember I went back to the north and I saw my friends and I went to give them a hug and they both just stiffened up. They're like, wait, what are you doing? You've come from a lot further away. Have you had to make some cultural adjustments?
Totally. I mean, it is funny to hear about the northern thing, because my boyfriend, he's from Lincolnshire, and so he's northern, and it totally makes me giggle hearing that, because I remember the first time I went to the north here, I've only ever lived in the south of England, and so I guess same, I'd gotten used to how things were culturally down here, and to hear you talk about hugging, that's such an interesting point, because I remember the first time I went to the north of England, I was like, oh my gosh, northerners are so friendly. But I guess maybe a lot of that is more vocally. They're super like sweet and chatty, and that resonated with me a lot, because Texas especially, despite its negative connotations as well, Texans are renowned for being super open and friendly. But Texans are definitely the sort of people who, like, you know, come into our house, what would you like to eat? Definitely going to be giving you a hug and a pet name almost instantly. So yeah, I think when I first moved to England as a whole, even though I'm half English and my mum's English, I definitely went through probably a first year, I think, of assuming that people hated me just because nobody just came up and struck up conversations with you in the way that people kind of normally do. I think in America in general, but let alone in the South.
Interesting. So, well, thank you very much for being on the show. Have we done some time? Let me have a look. Yeah, you know, we've done an interview.
I mean, I'm a chatty one, so I'm sure.
Well, good luck with the book.
Thank you.
It looks really great. I'll have another little flick for it before you leave with it, and I hope it goes well. And I need to come up to your shop. You did invite me for cocktails in your shop, but I was at work, so
totally. I mean, you know, it's a short sort of shop that if we do drinks, we do a margarita, of course. So very stereotypical.
Yeah. And we'll say a shout out to Superfan Fran, who has suggested you for the show.
Thanks, Franny.
You've been a great guest, and maybe when you are, you know, doing your international empire and you've got Hi Cacti shops, next to every Starbucks in every city. We'll get you back on the show.
Hope not. Let's let's keep it simple.
And you're going to be doing some more press and stuff. Do you know what's coming up?
Yeah, we've got a couple of other like interviews coming up. I mean, I get the impression that a lot of that's going to happen kind of after the book comes out. But I am going to be tying in a trip back home to see my family as well. So it looks like I'll be doing some interviews and stuff whenever I'm going back to Texas as well. So that'll be quite exciting. A nice way to see my family and my friends, and also kind of start promoting the book that way as well.
Now, let's just finish off with this. Well, I've spent a long time working in retail and ran a shop to some extent anyway. It's bloody difficult, retail, right? It's really hard. I think people underestimate how hard it is. And you've always got to have a smiley face on. But the general public can be quite difficult. Have you had some difficult experiences?
I have. I mean, it sounds like you, I've worked in retail since I was probably like about 17. So I've definitely... I mainly started off in coffee shops, for example. So I'm definitely used to customer facing, and definitely used to people throwing a fit over something as simple as like a coffee, let alone now having my own shop. It's occasionally a little bit difficult because at the end of the day, I don't have like a manager or anybody else I can blame, for example, or point a finger at or ask to kind of deal with a difficult customer. I kind of just have to do it on myself now. But I'm quite lucky because I feel like a shop like mine in the 7 Dials, and also just doing what we do, it's so lucky. I'm chuffed because I attract the loveliest customers. It's one of those where everyone who comes in is so wonderful that it's definitely a lot easier than, for example, when I was working at coffee shops at 6 a.m. in a city center and doing that. So. And
what about, obviously, we've had bloody COVID. How has this affected your, well, I mean, obviously it's affected your business in a profound way, but are you surviving? Has it been financially viable to keep going? Were you ever in any doubt? Or? Yeah,
I mean, of course, at the very beginning of COVID, I was in a lot of doubt, just like everyone. I think I didn't know if I was even going to have a business on the other side of it. So as much as we kind of joke at the moment about like the shop in the book, there was a really long period of time last year where I thought, I don't know. Well, for example, even the book had been given a green light before this happened. And then as soon as COVID happened, loads of people started losing their jobs and they pulled the book. So I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I feel so silly. Here I've been like feeling so comfortable and confident in my business and this book coming out, and suddenly everything's stopped. My book stopped. The shop had to close. My partner's also self-employed as well, and he was just about to open the doors for his own barbershop locally. And so we went from both feeling like really excited and pumped about these new things, these new exciting steps we had, to suddenly both being out of work on the dole for the first time ever. Do you
think that the government has done enough for you in your particular situation?
I mean, I think for considering I've got the huge comparison of having friends and family back home in the States and knowing what they were given, I feel, I have to admit, extremely lucky. As much as there's obviously lots of times and situations that I wish that the government might have done things a little bit differently. Their support for small businesses actually blew my mind. For example, I wasn't applicable for any self-employment help, which at the time I was like, oh my gosh, once again, how am I going to get through this? But because they were giving brick and mortar shops the help they did, and I think that's the thing that sometimes people need to bear in mind, is I've even heard people kind of criticize, like talking about all the money that, for example, the government was giving people with shops, but that was literally the thing that probably kept my business afloat over the past year. I was open maybe, I don't know, 5 months last year.
And there's big rent to pay on a shop, isn't there? Yeah. I know, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and like I said,
and his business picks up now? Is it kind of all right now?
Yeah, during the first lockdown, I was quite lucky too. As much as I was really worried about everything, because the shop was closed. And even though I have an online business, that's not the bread and butter of what I do, actually. The shop is mainly what I do, I think, because that's the thing I love so much. I don't absolutely love kind of the online side of business. But luckily, everybody during that first lockdown, suddenly they couldn't do anything, and lots of people were still working and working from home, and suddenly everybody wanted their Zoom calls to look like a urban jungle. So I was quite lucky because I was still able to do work remotely, where I would just kind of open up the outside of the shop and do kind of distantly shopping for customers by appointment. So there was definitely, you know, ways to make it work. And I think, like a lot of businesses, I just kind of had to get creative and figure out ways that I could still keep myself safe. My partner's vulnerable as well, so I needed to be kind of even hyper aware to make sure that he was okay. And just keep our business and our lives going.
Keep it going, yeah. Well, thank you very much again for being on the show.
Thank
you. I had a false ending earlier. That's just not really
round two. Ting.
Yeah, I just like, you know, you just think of extra things to say, don't you? Thank you very much. I hope it all goes well. Hope the book goes well. And
Thank you.
Keep us up to date with how it goes. If you're listening and you're in Brighton, Hi Cacti is up at 7 Dials, and we'll put all the links for the book and a website and all of the other stuff that there might be. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Baz. Appreciate it.